Hi everyone, and welcome to Giving Your Game the Best Chance of Success in the Cloud. This session will allow you to learn the behaviors and actions that have allowed developers to get the best value from the cloud for their games. This covers building your game, launching and running it successfully, and then continued growth. Firstly, well, let's say hello, let's introduce myself. So I have 20 plus years of leading dev and architecture teams, and I'm now at the point where I put the plus to make myself feel a bit younger. My name's Tristan, pronouns he and him. So yes, I've been leading those teams for over 20 years, recently specializing in the cloud, and I've been at AWS for nearly 2 years now, leading a team of solutions architects, and their role is to act as trusted advisors to our customers. So in short, we enable our customers to build games in the cloud in the right way. My first gaming device where I started out was an Atari 400, so I have incredibly fond memories of Star Raiders and Donkey Kong, so I will talk at length about those if anyone wants to. And my favorite game of all time right now is Pool of Radiance for the Commodore 64. I'm still trying to capture that first role-playing game love, so most recently with Divinity Original Sin 2, so always happy for people to email me suggestions for a route I might be able to take there. And finally, my favorite launch is Dream Arena, the European internet portal for the sadly ill-fated Sega Dreamcast. Obviously, I was very privileged to be involved in building that. So very fun memories. And relevant to this, it was my very first taste of the game industry being involved in it. And I've been fascinated ever since. So here's what I'm covering today. I'm going to give a quick introduction on AWS GameTick, and then the challenge. What is the challenge of ensuring success in the cloud? And that would lead to essentially lessons from the field. And this comes in 3 flavors: building it right, running it well, and growing for the future. And this is all based on what we have seen works well for studios, and also from some of the anti-patterns as well that we have observed. And hey, what presentation wouldn't be complete without a call to action at the end? So as you know, I'm here representing AWS GameTick today, so I really should give some context to that. And just a spoiler alert, I know when coming to conferences or watching conference videos, I hate going to a talk with an interesting clickbait title and then kind of feeling like I'm listening to a sales pitch. So yes, this is your standard big studios trust us slide. And that's great, and we're super thrilled about that. I mean, none of these studios are still developing for the Commodore 64, but I'll allow it. But it's really, really important to point out that we work with studios of all shapes and sizes. So this includes studios right at the start of their journey. Perhaps they've got funding, perhaps they don't, to launch and beyond. And we've got all sorts of mechanisms to help with that, which I'm not touching on this presentation because I'm coming from the solutions architecture point of view. But we have specialist business development and all sorts of people that can help you with this journey. So this is how we frame it: build, run, grow. So build is building your game out right. That's using modern architectures. It's the ability to leverage the cloud as part of that process. So typical examples: workstations in the cloud, build pipelines, render farms. That's where we're coming from there. And we have a whole suite of solutions to help. Run, that's getting the game actually launched and ensuring it is stable and scales with your game's popularity, and of course in a secure way. And finally, grow. And this is moving into the live ops or games as a service territory. It's keeping players interested, it's monetizing, and it's ensuring a strong community. And again, these are all areas in which we can help with. So I mentioned the challenge in the agenda of this talk. So let's take some time and just dig into exactly what that is. So if you can, take your mind back to 1988. And game launches used to be different. And yes, I mentioned it earlier, this is Pool of Radiance from the Commodore 64 days. This is 4 discs and 8 sides of glorious 8-bit role-playing game action. And I did say it was my favorite game. So the question to think to yourself is, what was different about a game release back then compared to a game launch now? Well, the answer. The game had to be completely done. There are no day one patches, there are no DLCs, there are no games as a service. What you picked up in the shop down at the newsagent with hard-earned pennies, that was the finished game. You released and you were done. And today, game launches today are hard. Now it's flying the rocket ship as you're still building it. Now, the thing is, it's never been easier to create and distribute games. And there's numerous game engines available to do that. And of course, now we have the Open 3D engine in partnership with the Linux Foundation to add to that. However, there's so much competition now that standing out and succeeding is really challenging. And the sad fact is that bad releases have consequences. What happens if your release goes badly? Well, this can lead to unhappy players. It can lead to review bombing. And that has a direct, tangible impact on sales, revenue, and perhaps, and I hate it, and I hate this ever happening to any studio, any company, this can lead to layoffs and potentially the death of the studio. And that leads me to the first section, building it right. We get it. When you're building your games, there's a lot to do. This is hard. There's design, there's proof of concepts, there's building it, there's testing it, and there's iterating around it. I mean, is it actually fun? With games, you can spend hours upon hours with design, of the building, of the testing. You can't really follow a normal project plan because it's got to be fun. It's got to pass the fun tests, which can cause all those iterations to happen, which can be incredibly frustrating. So where do you just fit the cloud in? Well, here's an important quote. You may delay, but time will not. And that comes from Benjamin Franklin himself. And yes, absolutely. At which point during all of this, are you actually considering how and why and the best way of leveraging the cloud? And that leads me to our first lesson from the field. Engage yesterday. And if you only take one thing from this presentation out of everything that I'm talking about, it's this: engage yesterday. The studios that we work with that have had the best success with the cloud and therefore their games, they've worked with us throughout the development cycle, as early as possible, in fact, starting out. There are no surprises, and we maintain an open and honest relationship. I mentioned trusted advisor earlier. That's how we see ourselves, and we always aim to be. So the advice here is talk to us early, engage early. So that helps us truly understand what it is you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. What's your mission? What mission do your funders need you to have? This is all important stuff to consider. And that gives us the time. It gives us the time to understand, to engage the right specialists throughout AWS, because we're a huge organization with many, many, many different services and specialists. And of course, the wider Amazon, perhaps Twitch, to really help and suit your needs perfectly. Leaving this a week before launch as an add-on thought, that's too late. It's too late. There's no other way to put it. And what could you realistically change in that time if you had thrown something up there and there wasn't enough time to change it, but your release date is coming? You don't want to be in that position. So again, engage yesterday. Secondly, you don't know what you don't know. Now, I'm going to be real humble here that I'm not a game designer. I'm not a game developer. And if you came to me to ask for advice on how your game mechanics should work, how wall climbing should work, what's the right narrative flow, I'd be terrible at that. I wouldn't be the right person to ask. That's not my expertise, and it's not my team's expertise. But where we specialize, it's in the whole cloud thing. That's literally what we do. So essentially, let us do the heavy lifting for you. Let us use our knowledge. This is where we're the experts, to get it right, to help you get it right, to help it be secure, to help it be performant. At the end of the day, we now have over 200 services at AWS. Navigating the best way through all of that is where solutions architects totally excel. And we have seen what solutions work best for our customers in all sorts of scenarios. So hey, lean on us. Lesson number 3, plan for success. Another quote I should throw in here is shoot for the stars and you're hitting the moon. And I mentioned earlier the consequences of a game launch not going well. But here's a scary thought. What if your game launch goes well? What if it goes really well? You launch and within a week, you have a gazillion players. And have you built your game to handle that? Are you ready for that? Have you well architected your game right from the start? And are you ready if this happens, say, a year after release? We've seen various sleeper hits in the gaming market where they launch, no one plays them, a year later, a streamer picks them up, and bang, suddenly they're popular, hugely popular. And here's an example of how we've seen an anti-pattern come in this area. So here we go. There's a week to go until launch, and we need to spin up our multiplayer setup, or is it a leaderboard or community, whatever it is. And hey, let's throw up one server, let's couple it to one database, and we'll run a few tests and job done, right? And now we've launched. And the game is getting real attention. So we scale vertically. You make the server bigger, you make the database bigger, which of course in the cloud, this is super easy to do, few clicks, however you want to do it, and it scales up, it gets bigger. But boom, this doesn't work forever, and it all goes a bit wrong. I mean, our largest instance, when I last checked, it has had over 24 terabytes of RAM and 448 virtual CPUs. But right, that's not the best architecture, throwing something on a box that you just make bigger and bigger and bigger and hope for the best. No. But how about this? We can help you build it right. And here's a really simple demo architecture for a classic multiplayer online title. So from left to right, on the left, your happy gamers. And here we've thrown in S3. That's for storage that scales with your games. It's serverless, and it sits behind CloudFront for a CDN, for caching performance, to ensure the best quality downloads and files for your games. We then throw in some elastic load balancing and EC2 auto-scaling. So what that is doing is scaling up and down the instances depending on how many people are playing your game. So it's all thrown together with all the different building blocks that we give you at AWS. And it's super easy. And right at the end, you may need more database style data. Here is more of a NoSQL style. So DynamoDB for serverless database storage to suit your game, to grow with your game. So there you go, we're better already. But hey, we can make it even easier. We can make it even simpler. So if you want to do game hosting, well, we've got a service for that. Amazon GameLift, that's our managed service for hosting of games. And it can easily handle multi-region fleets. It can just do that for you, worldwide, and matchmaking. We've got a matchmaker built into that as well. So we can just throw that in there, just remove some of the other components because GameLift will do that for you. Super easy. And you can concentrate on the fun parts of building your game. I also want to touch on how AWS can help with smooth launching of a game. So the technology with the ability to scale your game is one thing, and the launch day is another. So if you're going from a handful of people accessing your game to potentially hundreds of thousands of minutes, hours, days, and you want to make sure that's a success. So we offer infrastructure event management, as we call it, IEM, super sexy title. And that's where we give essentially white glove treatment. We make sure that all the teams on our side are aligned. We do pre-checks, make sure everything's right on your side. Everything's ready on our side so that we can keep our eyes on it as it launches. Yeah, we look around corners. We really help you. That's included as part of our enterprise support packages and also as an option via the account team that you're working with. So that's there for you. So next up, running it well. Lesson here, the first one, is make security your job zero, right? The security of your game, your IP, and of course, the security of your players' information is of critical importance. And AWS security is job zero. It's baked into everything we build and how we build it. And there's two parts of this, as I touched on. The first is security of the cloud. We handle that. We have years of experience. We have all the security checks around it, including both physical, where we keep all this hardware, and the how of how all our services are built. Security in the cloud, well, that's your responsibility. But of course, we're here to help with that. That's what the architect team can do. We can help you build it the right way. We can guide on the architectural principles and how to build it right. And again, this is something to start at the beginning. Get it right. You want to get it right and avoid the potential reputational damage of launching an event happening later. And sadly, we've seen many of these sorts of security events, both in the gaming industry and more widely. Secondly, how about making your releases flawless? And we've spoken about your first release and getting that right, but what about the second, the third, the fourth? All your game updates you might be doing, content updates, small, large, emergency patches, CI/CD pipelines, blue-green deployments, basically the ability to update seamlessly. I've mentioned S3 and CloudFront, and well, they can help get your content available around the globe with excellent performance and quickly. And by getting all this in early, it just helps with your agility in your test cycles as well, like before release. So it helps you fail quickly when you're iterating and testing game mechanics, new content, new levels, new things your players might be interested in. But you can correct it before launch, before players are impacted. So that's what I mean by flawless. And we have a whole suite of services around this to help you just have these build pipelines in place and iterate quickly and efficiently so that releasing, you just don't make it hard for yourself. You make it as smooth and easy as possible. Thirdly, and this is a hugely important topic and very popular nowadays, and about data and gathering the right data to understand your players. So the key thing from our point of view and my personal point of view is you want a data lake. What you don't want is a data swamp where you just collect data for the sake of it, throw it somewhere, just hope for the best later. No. You've got to think about what is the question you want to answer? What are the questions you're thinking of? Is it toxicity detection? Is it how best to monetize? What levels in your game might be driving players away? Are they too easy? Too hard? Are players cheating in some way? And can you detect that? Are your funders, they may well have metrics that you need to track and provide to them. Then you need to gather data to enable those right from the start and be ready for that. So get those systems in place ahead of time so you're not racing to understand post-launch and potentially losing valuable insights. Because if you don't capture the data to start with, you can't magic it up later. And we'll come back to this subject a bit later in the presentation. And yes, we do have an example solution for this. And this is our gaming analytics solution. And this is really simple, and it's a serverless architecture. So from left to right, you obviously have everything producing content. So players on mobile, players on PC, just maybe other servers, whatever it is, bringing in content. And it streams them in through Kinesis, which means it can scale up to very, very, very large amounts of data. It gets transformed via, say, Lambda there. And then ultimately, we keep following it all the way through, can end up in S3 as part of your data lake. But then for insights, this example uses Athena, which means it can sort of query it directly on S3 and then dashboard view it in Amazon QuickSight. So it's a really simple demonstration of how you can stream data from the left and get actual insights from the right. And by the way, you can spin this up, essentially a one-click deployment in an AWS account. So if you search for this, you'll find it. And spin it up today, give it a try and let us know what you think. So the third part is growing for the future. And I've spoken for a bit, so just a reminder about grow, and here we're talking about we've launched and we're stable and players love your game, right? You've got amazing reviews, you've launched and you're out there. So that's brilliant news, well done. But how do you keep your players to keep loving it? And this is where we come to live ops or games as a service. There's various terms around this. And this is a huge, important area for us. If it's important to our customers, it's important to us. That's basically how we work. And customers love talking to us about AI and ML. And these can build on your earlier work with analytics. So you can put the data to even greater use. So not just dashboarding and reporting, but actual machine learning based insights. So for example, what about predicting player behavior? What about automatic play testing? Wouldn't it be great if rather than having to get play testers to actually keep, say, playing your puzzle levels to work out how difficult they are? Well, what about if you could teach and via ML, the ML system could play the levels and determine what level number that should be and how difficult that is. And of course, detecting and preventing cheating, differentiating between normal player behavior and cheating player behavior. And this is a wide subject. This is a huge subject. It's moving so fast and it's moved so fast already. and it's easy to get stuck. This is one of the hardest areas to get started in. And it's partly down to the paradox of choice. So many choices and so many things to do, so many technologies. It's just, how do you get started? So yeah, people get hung up on how do you make it perfect, right? How do I get this model which is going to tell me every single player that's playing fairly and every single player that isn't playing fairly? How do I do that? Well, you don't, right? Voltaire said, perfect is the enemy of good. In fact, this is a standout quote that when I asked one of my specialist solution architects, like, what advice would he give? And this was the quote. And I thought it was beautiful. So what do we mean by that? Well, lesson from the field number one on this is iterate, right? Implementation of machine learning, well, it's a human learning process. If you wait until you have the perfect system, you may simply never, ever release it. And therefore, you're missing key opportunities of actually using that data. So this strongly links to the earlier session, right? About CI/CD and releasing and making releasing flawless. There's a theme here, which is get it out there, iterate over it. Get it out there, get a first model going, witness the value it gives you, and improve it as you go. And again, we can help with that. We can help get you started with how to use machine learning and AI in your games, right? Starting right from the beginning. Which, of course, leads me to the second lesson. Don't reinvent the wheel. This is an incredibly, potentially difficult subject when you get really, really deep into it. We make it easy to get started, but of course, it can be exceptionally complicated the more insights you want. And you have better ways of using your time, right? So we've invested a lot of time in creating services to make this as easy as possible. You wouldn't invent your own crypto algorithms, right? That's a general no-no in development. You just don't do that. And you should also take that advice in terms of not trying to create your own machine learning systems. Take advantage of what already exists and what has already been well tested by many, many customers worldwide. So we dive into one. This is an example for predictive user engagement. This is a nice, simple, logical example. We take information from your players on the left. And for example, let's say items they're shopping for in your online store. Then this goes in via AWS Lambda to ultimately end up in Amazon Personalize, which will then generate a personalized ranking of recommended items. And Personalize is a service, by the way, that sort of doesn't need training or coding by yourself. It really takes out the hard work for you. So I strongly encourage you to take a look at this. It doesn't require any previous ML experience to use. And then ultimately, those recommendations get sent to Amazon Pinpoint, and that's our flexible and scalable marketing communication service. So that can adjust its segmentation of your players. And then when you decide to do a campaign, well, it will handle that delivery. And that could be by email. It could be by push notifications directly to your game. You decide. But it's a quick example of how the services that we offer can do this. And here's another more recent example. And this is the GameTick Cohort modeler. And this solution, which is another one that can be one-click deploy, by the way, if you want to try it out right now after this session, it allows developers to map out and classify player relationships and behavior. So for example, and I've touched on this before, toxicity in game communities. That's a classic cohort case model. And again, this ultimately, but the main thing I want to key out here actually is the fact that this uses SageMaker, right, as a key part of it. And that's a fully managed service that we have that can build, train, and deploy machine learning models. And it comes with fully managed infrastructure, tools, and workflow. And really the emphasis here is subject to the previous slide is it's a service we offer. It does all this for you. It makes it easy. And if you use this modeler, it gives you a great example of it actually doing something, right? This is an example where you can actually execute and see how this is put together, how it works, and how it actually generates results. And it generates results that are visible just down to the bottom right to both business users and developers. So finally, we're at the call to action. So what are the talking points? So engage yesterday, and this is so important. I'm shouting slightly, and it's in bold, and it's in red capitals. I can't overemphasize this. Where we've seen success is where customers have worked with us right from the beginning. We understand each other, and we can help them and bring our best to bear for them. And where we've seen studios not being successful is where they engage late in the process, where really having to spin very quickly to try and get stuff working. And that's obviously presents a risk that you probably don't want to have. Secondly, Build with success in mind for your game, right? Expect it to go really well so that when you architect, you're ready to scale. You're ready to scale to a gazillion players. Thirdly, protect yourself and your players. And that's the security aspect. Security, job zero, start on that right from the beginning so there's no surprises later. We do our part. We'll make sure the cloud is secure, and we absolutely work with you to help you be secure. But then the rest is on you to make sure you follow that advice. But we've got all sorts of ways that we can help with that. Fourthly, gather and then execute on the right data so that whatever insights you need, you're gathering the right data and all the information you need on that. And then iterate. Use all the tools we have so that when you do releases, you can do second, third, fourth, 500 releases as quickly as you want, multiple releases a day, whatever you need. But don't make that difficult. Make that easy so you can just keep releasing as quickly as you want to. And then finally, touching on machine learning, don't reinvent the wheel, right? We have the services to really help here, from depending on how much you want to be involved with the coding, and of course the solutions architects and our wider offerings and partners and training. We can just help really bring you up to speed on machine learning so you can truly unlock the value that you can find for your games. So finally, it comes to me to say thank you. Thanks for your time in watching this session, and I wish you every success in your future cloud adventures.